This is in response to Dr. Paul Krugman's article in the New York Times, Monday, March 2nd, 2015, Walmart's Visible Hand. Dr. Krugman points out that recently Walmart has increased its wages from its hourly employees from, I believe, a minimum wage would be about $7.75, I believe, and that they're increasing it to $9 an hour. I don't know how it affects others in states who have a minimum wage above that, but I'm assuming that they may or may not get a raise. Dr. Krugman points that this is important, and this is good for two reasons. The first reason is that others will follow suit, or hopefully others will follow suit, and I'm speaking a couple days after Walmart had done it, and yes, others have followed suit, though I did notice that Target did not follow suit. And if someone's making $7.75 an hour, then they're making $9 an hour, 40-hour work week, $40 more, after taxes $30. That $30, as someone who, when my kids were younger, knows that $30 an extra per week is a fair amount of money and can be used for some important things. Dr. Krugman also goes to point out, which is the more important aspect of all of this, and that is that the decision to raise the minimum wage was a political choice, and that it was not a choice of the invisible hand of the marketplace, which all of the Republicans and all of the Libertarians are touting as being the reason why we need to keep wages down, or that wages do not need to be raised. Dr. Krugman points out that the labor market is basically like any other market, that labor is like a commodity. Depending on how much their commodity is, there's the value of that commodity. And therefore, minimum wage is that's the way it should be. But Dr. Krugman points out that the one thing about the people is that they're not really a commodity, or they're more than a commodity, even though the Republicans want you to think that they're just a commodity, because there is a social aspect to it and there is a political aspect to it. And those things can also drive forward wages for the good. He does go into talk about how in 1940, right before World War II, that the United States was an extremely unequal country, and that by 1950 we had become an extremely equal country. In a lot of ways, there was much more that needed to be done, and a lot of that had to do with that because of the war, wages were driving, the wages had to be driven up because there was a shortage of people in the marketplace. And that after the war, we kept wages up and we kept employment up, which was very, very important. And because people are social and political, as I said, that can help drive those forces up. Getting back to the minimum wage aspect of it, is that we know from studies, recent studies, that in states that have enacted legislation, which is a political action, to increase the minimum wage in that state, that they have already done studies to indicate that increasing the minimum wage does not affect the employment in that state, even if there are surrounding states who did not increase the minimum wage. So that it is an overall aspect of good, and it does not decrease employment. And again, also as part of the Great Compression, which was that time frame from about 1930 to possibly early 1970s, because real wages have not increased since the early 1970s, I believe, is that we were able to, the compression would be that the rich didn't go outstandingly richer, and the poor got significantly less poor, let's just say. They were still poor, there will always be poor, but the lower middle class and the middle class were able to have a life, a much better, more decent life. I mean, I know how hard it is right now trying to get by on my meager salary. But so what we have found out by the fact that states have enacted legislation to increase the minimum wage, and studies have been done comparing those states to the states next to them, and found that the increase in minimum wage did not affect the overall employment in that state, did not drag other companies to go to other states, et cetera, et cetera. So we know that this works. And we know that basically it is easier, that is easier than we thought, that if we increase the minimum wage. And also, not only that, as Dr. Krugman pointed out, that is very, very true, is that when you increase the wages for your employees, number one, hopefully you'll have a better workforce, you'll have a more dedicated workforce, you'll have a more enthusiastic workforce, you'll have less turnover, and when people are more enthusiastic about their job, they'll learn more about their job, they'll be more concerned about their job, and that'll equate to higher customer satisfaction. So all of those things are good and positive things. And Dr. Krugman points out that by doing this, what we are coming to realize is that inequality is a choice. And it is a choice that politicians and people in business have made for a long, long time, since the beginning of time, technically. But if we look at that period of the Great Compression, from the mid-1970s, let's say right now, and it really got exacerbated and started much greater in the Reagan administration, is that we have a whole generation of people in which the value of their work, they were underpaid for years and years and years. And how can that ever be brought back? And the example I would like to make is that the 4 Walmart children are each worth $20 billion or something to that effect. $20 billion would pay for, I believe, $1 billion per year would pay for 20,000 people making $50,000 per year. That's how much that 1 billion of that 20 billion that each one of them has. Now, am I saying to take all that money away? No, I'm not saying to take all that money away. What I'm trying to say is that the Walmarts could still have an incredibly tremendous amount of money, and at the same time pay their workers a living wage. Does that mean? And if we want to get into any, I don't want to get into any other stuff about how many stores there would be and all that other stuff. All I know is that Walmart has consistently paid low wages. They've demeaned their employees. They have made their employees think that they're useless. And it's dumbed down a lot of things. And it's time for that to stop. And it's time for us to realize and question our Republican friends day in and day out. Is inequality, a choice, or is it not a choice? Can we actually affect inequality by the political choices that we make? And I would say, yes, we can.